McDaniel from the Basketball Conference podcast, and you can also join him doing the pregame work, part of the team there at ESPN Blacksburg for the Virginia Tech football games. And we've made our way through 13 teams. We've got one left. I don't know if this is an elite team, but in this division, there is no Wisconsin. There's no Michigan State. There's no even maybe NC State this year, or Florida State certainly, to challenge them, to really put the test to Miami. And I would expect that they're going to trip up. I've got them losing twice, but it should be enough to get them back to a conference championship game. So Mark Richt has been a consistent winner, as consistent as almost anybody outside of the legendaries like Nick Saban and Urban Meyer, but not a champion. Now he's got this program at a place where, okay, he's going to prove in the next few years that he is a championship coach. Your take on Miami football?
I mean, they're very good. I still think they're a year or two away from being elite, being back, being college football playoff level good. I still think we're a year or two away from that. They're a team that has a ton of young talent. Some of that's going to manifest itself this year. Some of it manifests itself last year already, especially on the defensive side of the ball. They have a lot of talent there. Quarterback's a question mark. Can't harp on that enough. Miami fans, for better or worse, it's Malik Rozier or bust this year, 100%. If he takes a step forward and he's consistent, consistent's the key with him, and that's the word of the day. If he's consistent, Miami's ceiling is, off the charts. A consistent Malik Rozier, like we saw at times last year, he's capable of making all the throws. It's just whether or not he can do it on a regular basis. If he does it on a regular basis, this team is outstanding. And this team can compete with a team like Clemson and make it a competitive game in the conference championship game. If he can't throw the ball down the field with any level of consistency, we're going to see another result like we did last year in the ACC championship game. I personally don't think there's a team in the Coastal this year that can challenge Miami. I think they have too much talent on both sides of the ball, regardless of what happens at quarterback. So I think Miami, even if it's a loss or two, I don't really see a scenario or envision a scenario where Miami doesn't go back to the ACC championship game. There would have to be injuries, multiple upsets that were unexpected, obviously. A whole lot would have to go wrong. A couple of teams in the Coastal would have to be playing out of their minds, and I really just don't see the firepower in the rest of the division to do that. So I think Miami makes it back to the conference championship game. I don't think it's any closer than last year. I don't. I think Clemson got better. I'm not sure that Miami got a ton. I think they obviously have some skill position talent that got better. Lorenzo Lingard coming in at running back is an unbelievable player, and I think he's going to be a problem in the ACC for years to come. He's going to be very good. But I don't think Miami got good enough to close the gap with Clemson, and Clemson's returning that skill position talent up front. Outside of quarterback, Miami's got questions on the offensive line that I think in a game against Clemson will make a difference. I think that pass rush could be too much. I think Malik Rozier will be overwhelmed again. I think Miami is definitely primed, I think, at their peak this year to make it to a New Year's Six Bowl. I think the talent's there to be a top 10 or 15 team all year long, but making it to a college football playoff this year, I think would be a stretch just given what they're going up against in the other division.
So if there's any hope for anybody, you would think with Miami having to travel to Blacksburg and also to Atlanta against Georgia Tech, those would appear to be the two teams that have the best chance. And because they've got the home games, but then the schedule's so difficult for those two teams, the Hokies and the Yellow Jackets elsewhere, Georgia Tech has to play Clemson. That's almost an automatic loss. Virginia Tech draws Florida State and Boston College out of the other division, as does, interestingly enough, Miami. They've got the same two non-division opponents. That almost never happens. But the head-to-head has to be won by Virginia Tech to give them any shot, and likewise Georgia Tech, but it's negated by the Clemson game that they have to play as well. So it is difficult to find a path for anyone to get past Miami.
Yeah, it's not as much that Miami, I want to phrase this in a way that won't piss off their entire fan base. It's not that Miami's talent is far superior to that of the rest of the division. It's just that I don't think that the teams throughout the rest of the Coastal Division have enough at their key positions to compete with Miami. Like, there are question marks throughout the Coastal Division at a lot of key positions that Miami just doesn't have question marks at. Like, in the secondary, Virginia Tech's got questions, Georgia Tech's got questions, Pittsburgh's got questions. Like, Miami doesn't have any questions in the secondary, and they have pass catchers to get the job done. And like, the pass rush of some of these teams is in question, like Pittsburgh and like Virginia Tech and like Georgia Tech, who's completely changing schemes defensively, by the way. So the teams that could potentially exploit any weaknesses that Miami has on offense, particularly a quarterback, like, I don't think they reside in the Coastal. Like, I don't think that happens. I think the teams that can exploit the weaknesses Miami has reside in the other division, and Miami just simply doesn't play those teams. I mean, they do play Florida State, which could get a little hairy just because I think Florida State's got the talent to match up with Miami on any year. So that's obviously one of the biggest games of the year in the conference, but Miami's going to make it to the ACC championship game. There's no question about that. I just have a really hard time seeing them push Clemson.
The second best team in the division may not finish in the top 25. They don't have to deal with another team. Virginia Tech, again, and Georgia Tech are the likely candidates to be 8-4, 7-5 teams that are like top 35 teams, 40 teams. They don't have to deal with, you throw Wisconsin in the SEC Western Division, or you throw them in the Big Ten East, they got to deal with like 4 teams that are like serious. I'm not dissing Miami. They play the schedule and they play in the division. There are other bad divisions around college football that they could certainly win, but they just are fortunate that they don't have to deal with that kind of schedule or division lineup.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite simple. I just don't think the teams that can exploit Miami's weaknesses exist in the Coastal Division. And that was the case last year, too. I mean, the Pittsburgh game was weird. It's one of those games you kind of have to almost, I mean, props to Pittsburgh, and Pittsburgh was the better team that day, but you almost have to throw it out because of how weird things got, especially with Rozier. It was the worst game of his career. But you saw Wisconsin with their defense be able to exploit Miami in the bowl game. You saw Clemson's defense exploit Miami in the ACC championship game. I mean, those teams exist out there. They're just not in the Coastal Division. So I think Miami's path to at least making it back to the ACC championship should be pretty swift.
All right, folks, I hate to be boring here, but it appears as though Mike and I are pretty settled on Miami, Clemson. That's how I've got it lined up as well, with Clemson going 11-1, 7-1 in the ACC, Miami at 10-2, 6-2. So if you're trying to, Miami fans, work your way into a college football playoff, it all depends on what's happening elsewhere, if I'm correct, at 10-2, and then obviously needing to beat Clemson in an ACC championship game. So, Mike, you pretty much have the same deal.
Yeah, I do. It's Clemson, Miami. Record-wise, I want to predict Clemson to go 12-0, but they always slip up. I said 12-0 on the Clemson preview on my podcast. I think I'm going to revise that to 11-1 because I'm allowed to do that because I say so. I said Miami would also go 11-1. I think there's potential there for them to go 10-2. I think either way, they're in the ACC championship, which, if they lose the ACC championship, they're not going to the college football playoff anyway. So, if they lose 2 games and they go to the ACC championship, even at 3 losses, they'll be in a great bowl game. Best case scenario, I think they're in a New Year's 6. I can't see them beating Clemson.
All right. Again, if you want more ACC coverage, you go to Mike's podcast with Joey Weaver, who you saw earlier. It's the Basketball Conference Podcast. You can catch Mike on Twitter at Mike McDaniel CFB. Of course, I've got videos and predictions all over the place here. And if you want more Miami coverage, certainly I've got it here as well. So thanks to everyone who joined the live chat. We appreciate it. We blew it out for 2 hours on the ACC. Hope you enjoyed it. And Mike, as always, appreciate you helping us out.
Thanks, Mark. Appreciate it.
And we will see everyone Monday night at 6 o'clock Eastern time right here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football.